To receive a message from Mars has long been the hope of many of our eminent scientists, for it is known that the planet has an atmosphere capable of supporting human life, although it is believed, because the weight of a given mass at Mars' surface is only 3/8 of the weight of the same mass at the surface of the Earth, the men of Mars must be very much larger than the men of our Earth. Certainly, they would be far larger than Mr. Ethereal Duff of 564 Sausage Street, Hoboken, New Jersey, for he is what one might justly call a mere shrimp. And yet, small as Mr. Duff is, his is the honor, as he himself admits, of having received the first message by radio from Mars. There is no doubt in my mind that Mr. Duff did receive such a message, and on a crystal set. The facts were given me by an official of a state institution. This official was a large, muscular man, and he wore a uniform with a cap to match, and I always believe anything a man in a uniform tells me. This official's name is Casey, Michael Francis Xavier Casey, but he is called Mike for short. By his intimate friends he's addressed as Bumnose Mike, but this is only because at one time he was a prize fighter, and one of his opponents, as Mr. Casey himself says, gave him a biff on the smeller. But that has nothing to do with the amazing discovery of Mr. Duff. I found Mr. Casey when I went to interview Mr. Duff on behalf of the Upper Flushing Scientific and Annual Clambake Association. Most agreeable. His uniform was of a greenish-brown cotton stuff, and on his cap and the flap of the collar of his coat was a number 47 in fact, in what at first seemed to me gold numerals. I later decided they were not gold but only brass, either highly polished or gold-plated. "Mr. Casey, sir," I said, "I have come to interview that distinguished radio scientist, Professor Ethereal Duff, on behalf of the Upper Flushing Scientific and Annual Clambake Association. While we have read rather complete accounts of Professor Duff's discoveries, and several papers on them have been written by our members and read at our meetings, a dispute has arisen among us, and I have been delegated to interview Professor Duff and get the true facts. It seems, Mr. Casey, sir," I continued, "that some doubt has arisen whether Professor Duff actually heard from Mars itself. As you know, sir, the eccentricity of the orbit of Mars is very much greater than that of the orbit of the Earth, being 0.093 as compared with 0.017, less the usual 2% off for cash in 10 days, and this has led some doubting minds to hold that, the refraction of the ether wave being inverse ratio to the normal vote for Brian on Tuesdays, not fully on Sunday, Professor Duff really received a message from one of the moons of Mars, and not from Mars itself." "You are undoubtedly aware, Mr. Casey, sir," I said, "that the two moons of Mars were discovered by Professor Asaph Hall in Washington in 1877, conformably to the prediction of Kepler, and realizing the fancies of Swift and Voltaire." "Is that the Swift that has the big slaughterhouse in Chicago?" asked Mr. Casey. "No, Mr. Casey, sir," I said. "Then I don't know him," said Mr. Casey. "Do you know Mr. Swift of Chicago?" I asked politely. "No," said Mr. Casey. "I don't know him neither. I don't know no Swifts, and I don't want to know no Swifts. I don't want to know nobody. I know too many folk already." But you no doubt do know, Mr. Casey, sir, I said, that the inner of the two moons of Mars, Phobos, revolves in less than 8 hours, so that to an observer on the planet it rises in the west and sets in the east, while the outer moon of Mars, Deimos, revolve in 30 hours, so that it appears nearly stationary for a long time.
Have you got a chew of tobacco in your pants? Asked Mr. Casey.
No, I said, but you can easily see that this fact indicates that radio waves coming from the moon Deimos would be audible for a longer time than those from Mars or from the moon Phobos, because the moon Deimos moves slowly, while Mars revolves.
I'd give me left ear for a chew of tobacco, that I would, said Mr. Casey. Personally, I like the soft kind. The dry kind chews longer, but the soft kind spits for you. I was always a great one for spitting. I says to me wife many's the time, what fun does a man get out of chewing if he don't spit? Now, when it comes to cigars.
Thank ye, sir. And for that reason, Mr. Casey, sir, I said when I handed him the cigar, it is held by some that Professor Duff in fact heard a message from the moon Deimos, and not from Mars itself. Now let us consider the facts. Professor Duff had gone far in radio experimentation.
He went too far when he took the axe and exterminated his wife and his parents and his mother-in-law, said Mr. Casey. I'm no radio nut, but I say he went too far.
An incident, a mere incident, I said. No doubt they annoyed him. Perhaps he was working on his set and they called him to dinner. That always annoys a radio enthusiast. In such cases, the radio enthusiast sometimes kills and sometimes he merely wishes to kill. But what Professor Duff did to his family is a mere incident.
It was an incident for them, all right, said Mr. Casey. It was worse than an incident. It was an accident.
Yes, I said, no doubt.
You ought to laugh, said Mr. Casey said. That was a joke I was making. I says to you, it was worse than an incident. It was an accident. He dented them with the axe, did you see? An accident. You should laugh.
Oh, yes. Ha, ha, I said hastily. But to get back to the important matter, Professor Duff would sit for hours working with his radio set, either listening in or changing its makeup. Often he would sit for 92 hours at a time, labouring with true scientific eagerness, for he held the theory that if he could make the proper adjustments, he could hear from the spirit world. He particularly wanted to hear from his uncle, Sir Lawrence Duff, who departed this life when he happened to try to drive a 10-ton truck through a freight car loaded with dynamite. Professor Duff came of a highly religious and temperate family, and it was his boast that no one in the family had ever tasted liquor. But the coroner's jury brought in the verdict on his uncle Silurius, killed by a car of dynamite while trying to drive a 10-ton truck through it while intoxicated. Naturally, Professor Duff wished to talk to his departed uncle and ask him whether he had indeed taken to drink or merely had something go wrong with his steering gear.
A man can't trust none of them bootleggers these days, said Mr. Casey sadly. They say it is good stuff, and when you taste it, it ain't nothing but carbolic acid or prune juice.
Exactly, I said. And so, Mr. Casey, sir, Professor Duff tried every experiment possible in order to hear from his uncle Silurius, and he finally decided that success rested in finding a proper substitute for the ordinary crystal. He tried every variety of crystal. He tried salt crystals and ammonia crystals and sugar crystals. He tried every known crystal, but unfortunately, Every failure made him more and more morose. He yelped bitterly when his wife brought him food. He swore and raged when his mother-in-law breathed, for she had asthma and he often thought the noise she made was static. He even became angry with his dear old mother when she said she thought the crystal he was trying to invent was a little strong. For you know, Mr. Casey, sir, I continued, Professor Duff attempted to create a new crystal to be known as the Uncle Silurius Duff crystal. No doubt he was on the right road. He was seeking a crystal that would bring his Uncle Silurius through clearly from the spirit world, and for that reason he sought a material that would be, so to speak, in rapport with his Uncle Silurius Duff. You remember that his Uncle Silurius, while on Earth, was fonder of Limburger cheese than of anything else, so Professor Duff, with keen scientific acumen, attempted to make a Limburger cheese crystal. First, he boiled the Limburger cheese in garlic.
If I was his folks, said Mr. Casey, I would have took the axe to him before he had the chance to use it on me. The time to use an axe is when a man starts in to boil the Limburger cheese, let alone the garlic. Not that in the old days a thin slice of Limburger cheese, liberally smeared with mustard, between 2 cuts of moisty rye bread, didn't go good with a glass of beer. Limburg cheese has its uses, yes sir, but boiling it to make crystals of ain't one of them, no sir.
You are right, Mr. Casey, sir, I said. And although Professor Duff has never acknowledged it in writing, I'm sure you are right. He had no success whatever in crystallizing the Limburger cheese after it had been boiled. It would not form itself into crystals. It formed ropes and slabs of Limburger linoleum and soup, but it would not form crystals. It formed odors so strong that the roof flopped up and down and the foundations of the house palpitated, but it would not crystallize. And it was then, when all seemed darkest, that Professor Duff heard of the meteorite that had fallen near Pesquagentic, Maine. He immediately decided to try a crystal from that meteorite. With a flash of inspiration, he knew that it would be different from an ordinary crystal.
Like different Haig and Haig you get from different bootleggers these days, as I'm told, said Mr. Casey. One is like under cold tea, and the next is nothing but jagged lightning with the edges filed sharp. The one has no effect that wouldn't permit you to sit amongst nice ladies and knit a pink wool sweater, but a jolt of the other makes a man want to climb a tree and bite a grizzly bear on the neck.
Truly, I agreed. And Mr. Casey, sir, it was while Mr. Duff was awaiting the crystal from the meteorite that fell at Pesquagentic, Maine, that he decided the meteorite must have come from Mars. His mental process in arriving at this conclusion was sound. Mars, he said to himself, has long been wanting to get into communication with the Earth. But until the invention of radio, this has been impossible. Now it is possible, but, he argued, the Martians have doubted that Earth has a proper crystal to use in receiving Martian communications. Therefore, the first thing the Martians would attempt would be to send the Earth some of the Martian crystals. Mars, wishing to do this, would undoubtedly rig up a large cannon, load a lot of crystal into it, and fire it at the Earth. That is what this meteorite undoubtedly is. So, when I have the crystal taken from the meteorite, I shall be able to communicate with Mars.
But, hold on now, said Mr. Casey. I'm not knowing much about these radio sets, mind you, but wasn't someone after telling me
that them crystal sets don't get messages from very far off? Mr. Casey, sir, you are right, I said. But you must remember that Mars is only 48,600,000 miles from the Earth. Sure, Mr. Casey agreed. I was almost forgetting that. Which is not far for a crystal set, I said, if constructed by a man who knows how to build a set properly. Of course not, said Mr. Casey. What's 48 million miles more or less anyhow? Does your crystal set listen in that far, sir? Mr. Casey, sir, I said solemnly, I give you my word that on June 17, 1923, I was listening in on my crystal set, one I made with my own hands, using only a cigar box and $3 worth of material, when I distinctly heard a sound that I can best describe by saying piff, piff. For a few minutes I thought it was merely static, but a little consideration told me that no static had ever said piff, piff in that tone of voice. Immediately I knew I was hearing a sunspot piff, piffing. And Mr. Casey, the sun is 92,900,000 miles from the Earth. I need say no more regarding the capabilities of a well-constructed crystal set. And to talk plain to you, said Mr. Casey, you'd better not. So, Mr. Casey, sir, I said, I only need remind you of what you already know. Mr. Duff secured a crystal from the Pesquaguntic meteorite, put it in his set, and immediately heard from Mars. And went and dented his whole family with the axe, said Mr. Casey. Ah, I said, but that was necessary. He explained all that to the coroner. The members of his family were so full of negative animal magnetism that it spilled out of their ears, flowing through the house and short-circuiting the Martian ether waves. Professor Duff quite plainly informed the coroner that he had not meant to kill his family. That they died was entirely an accident. He merely wished to knock small holes in the tops of their heads so that the negative animal magnetism, instead of flowing downward from their ears, would spout directly upward from the new holes in their heads and pass harmlessly into the upper atmosphere. You will recall, I am sure, Mr. Casey, sir, that after he had made the holes in the tops of their heads, by tapping them there with the axe, he took them into the front yard and seated them back to back. He did that because his aerial was in the backyard. He did not want the negative animal magnetism to spout up against his aerial. It was, I admit, unfortunate that his family could not stand a simple jolt on the head. That was their fault, not his. The family of a true radio enthusiast should be so built as to stand more than that when the radio enthusiast is enthusing normally. Is that so? Is that so now? Said Mr. Casey in a tone I did not quite like. And I suppose you would tap your own wife on the head with an axe if you got a notion she was a nuisance to your radio fooling? No, I said promptly. No, Mr. Casey. Sir, I would not. I have given the matter deep consideration, and if I ever wish to communicate with Mars, as I expect to shortly, and my family oozes negative animal magnetism from their ears, I shall not puncture their heads with an axe. I have a far better plan. I shall bore holes in the tops of their heads with an auger. I see, said Mr. Casey in a tone I thought distinctly foxy. So that's the general idea, is it? And what was it you said you'd be wanting to ask this Duff guy now? A very simple question, Mr. Casey, sir, I said. Up to the present time, Professor Duff has not told the world what message he received from Mars. I want to hear from his own lips what that message was. I want to ask him to confide to me in absolute secrecy, if need be, the message he heard on that wonderful day. If possible, I want him to allow me to repeat the message to the members of the Upper Flushing Scientific and Annual Clam Bake Association, so that we may make the investigations we desire to make to learn positively whether the message was from Mars itself, or from the moon Deimos, or possibly from the moon Phobos.
And how you know that? Asked Mr. Casey.
By the words of the message. Undoubtedly, Mr. Casey, sir, I said. By the manner in which Professor Duff has so closely guarded the message, giving it out to no one, not even to the Sunday newspapers, I am convinced it was a message of the utmost importance. No doubt it is a message that, when revealed, will change the whole future history of the world. It may, and doubtless will, change our forms of government, give us a new religion, give us an insight into the spirit world, and make of all men real supermen. By the phrasing of that message he received, we may be able to judge whether it came from Mars or from the moon Phobos. It may be slightly different in dialect.
Well, go on then, and ask him, said Mr. Casey. He's in the nice little room down yonder, with 675 above the door. But don't be long, and don't rile him.
I walked down a corridor which had rooms on either side, all neatly barred to prevent persons from annoying those inside, and I found Professor Duff. He came to the door and grinned at me through the bars, and I told him frankly what I wished. I explained the greatness of the Upper Flushing Scientific and Annual Clam Bake Association. Professor Duff, sir, I said, as a delegate from that association, I am empowered to beg you to confide to us the message you received by radio from Mars. If possible, we want your permission to give it to a waiting world. Until now, you have kept it secret. It is time you let the millions of eager inhabitants share the message with you, in the name of science and for the good of the world. Will you tell me what the message was? For a full minute, Professor Duff looked me in the eye. Then he said, "Yes, I can trust you. You will repeat the message ungarbled and untwisted. I will tell you what it was." I trembled in every limb. I was frightfully excited, but I tried to be calm. "What, sir," I asked, "was that world epoch message you received from Mars?" "It was," said Professor Dove, "this. Yes, we have no bananas." And then he climbed hastily up the bars of his door and uttered low twittering sounds like a squirrel.